Coming into this, it's my dog. Coming into this video, I feel that, man, she's powerful. Coming into this video, I feel this need, like I'm feeling this desire to present myself as some kind of expert. I love you, puppy. Thank you. You know, maybe I'll just wait till she's done. You're very frightening. Yeah, we're all afraid. Thank you. I love you. I love you. I love you. I think that's appropriately humbling. What I was gonna say is I feel this need to like present myself as some kind of an expert to the people who exist out, who might stumble across my very, 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 very tiny channel here. A lot of stuff has been happening in my life past few months, just internally for me. If you've run across any of my older videos, what have you, you may notice that they're very intellectual. That's not really where I am right now. Even the name of my channel, it started as Super Salient, then it changed to Mind of Meaning, and I recently changed it to Heart of Meaning to sort of indicate a shift in how I'm looking at things. And I'm going to try to be as earnest as possible on a platform where you're basically you're supposed to show some kind of like an affect, like you're supposed to affect your like a some kind of pretense of who you are. You're supposed to be engaging and smiling and do the whole like, what's up you guys, welcome to my channel, like and subscribe, like you're supposed to do all of that stuff. And I feel some of the pull to move in that direction, but I've been trying to figure out where I want to even go with this video. In part, where I want to go is just, there are some things I want to talk about, and I guess they're primarily my experience. I don't know that you've experienced, whoever you are, have experienced anything similar, but I've been experiencing a lot of things lately. So, where to begin? I'm going to speak relatively vaguely, which is something I'm quite good at. One of the things I've been going through is sort of the experience of getting scared out of my mind. And what I mean by that is that it feels as if the center of where I operate from, where I'm living from, has shifted from like a head space oriented space to like a heart space oriented space, which in turn has almost begrudgingly led me to being in many cases more open to woo type language. And that isn't to say that I'm full-throatedly asserting the truth of all woo whatever, but in having a shift in perspective, it's sort of, I wouldn't say disorienting so much as in some ways profoundly orienting, disconcertingly orienting. um, it's like you've been wandering around in a fog, and then suddenly the fog lifts, and you realize where you are, and you're like, I had I had no idea this was where I was. I thought I understood how things were, and suddenly, like, now that I see things a certain way, it just I I I didn't know. Um, I don't think this is like an awakening experience or enlightenment or anything like that. Um, I think it's the culmination of sort of a long process for me, like a long grieving process, and this was something I wanted to get to. There's a grieving process related to my childhood. So like when I was a kid, my parents got divorced, right? It's tale as old as time in some ways, or at least the 70s when divorce rates started going up, right? So my parents got divorced, and it was kind of a spectacular divorce. And part of a result of that was, I needed to, I wanted the pain to stop of that experience. And as a kid, I didn't really understand how to do that, how to get the pain to stop. So at some point, shortly after my parents separated, I discovered Buddhism, and I learned powerful tools, and I had a powerful motivation. Negative reinforcement is power. Like, I just wanted to stop. I just wanted to stop. Like, that was the experience. And by focusing on Buddhism and meditation, I learned techniques to pretty effectively suppress my feelings. And that's not how you're supposed to do it, right? That's not what you're supposed. It's not what you're supposed to do. But I didn't have whole lot of guidance. This was the 2000s. There weren't really. I mean, YouTube was barely, if at all, a thing. There wasn't really resources aside from books. I didn't know anybody in my personal life who was on a similar path. So it was largely, I did have access to a lot of books, and it was largely just trying to interpret those books the way like a young teenager can interpret, which is, not very great. In that process, I like really eventually got good at really like disconnecting from my sense of my feelings. I'm going to fast forward over a lot, okay? And just speak about like I had a situation with an ex about 7-ish years ago, and that breakup ended rather spectacularly. And you could say she broke up with me, and like, okay, call it cope. I can call it cope, you know. I don't care. We can give her that she broke up with me. That's fine. I harbored a lot of resentment, but there was an experience right before we broke up where I was feeling overwhelmed by like all of the stress that was happening in our situation, and I suddenly had this shift, and the shift was like that it was important to learn to care well, to love well. So this would have been, the end of 2016. And man, it both feels very a long time ago and not long at all. But so I felt this shift that I was like, I need to let her know that I care. And there was some part of me that said, I need to let her know that I care, even if that ends the relationship. And it might. And it was one of those rare moments that I felt like I had conviction. A lot of my life, ever since I started to, really be skilled at suppressing my feelings, a lot of my life has been, analysis paralysis, right? Like, just like, oh, what should I do? What should I do? Like, all the, like, how am I supposed to know? What am I supposed to know? And this was like a moment where it's like I kind of knew already. So, like, I sent her a text message. I said, like, I want to, I want to take you out on the town, just you and me. We just go and just have a, go out on the town. And she said, well, talk when I get home. And so, I mean, to me, this was like, okay. She didn't say yes. So I kind of had this looming feeling, this otherworldly feeling as I drove home. And when I walked through the door, she said, I think we should break up. And what I said to her was, I'm okay. And then she broke down crying. Now I would have several weeks after that, like my own incredible stress, incredible, like, coming to terms with all of these emotions that were suddenly there. And I felt all this wounding and pain and anguish. And I wrote it to her. I dedicated it to her. I felt so much care and so much hurt. Much like my puppy. Thank you for scaring them away. Thank you, pup. Thank you. Good job. I love you. Okay, so that happened. And the next 7 years of my life has been sort of a trying to figure out what happened there. Like, and I felt the need to change. I felt that need, but I didn't really know what to do. Over the course of that time, I came across John Vervaeke's work, and that was very helpful to me. It helped me put words to things, to map certain things that I'd known intuitively. It really helped. It helped me, in some ways, think my way out of my head. There were things about, it's particularly related to this idea of domicide, the death of home, the killing of home, like, that resonated a lot, given the whole divorce thing. And I've only been recently able to, like, speak to some of that. And sort of where I'm at lately is that grief, I think grief is a very profoundly orienting emotion. And I've just been allowing myself to go there. All the feelings that I've suppressed over the years, all of the stuff that I felt. And let me be clear, being in my head really did help me feel better, right? Like, it's not like you go into your head because it feels bad, right? Like, that did make me feel better for a while. Like, I didn't, it's like Novocaine, right? It's like if you have a little, what do you call it? Localized anesthesia, on the tooth. It's like the thing that was sore and aching, like it stops, and you're like, oh, I mean, you might be a little dysfunctional in how you speak because you've numbed like the area, so you're talking with a bit of a slur. And that's kind of right. That's kind of what I was doing. I was living with kind of an emotional slur. I was because I was still having feelings. It's not like those feelings went away. They were still coming through and bubbling up in ways that I didn't control. But what I could control was suppressing them. That's what made me feel like I had control in my life, is that like I could get myself to a nice, safe, stable space, and like I could avoid everything that made me anxious, and I could just be in my safe little space and never deal with confrontation, never deal with yucky feelings that made me feel uncomfortable and bad. And I could just I could be fine. I could be okay. um, as long as I could control everything that put me, like put me out of context of what I was feeling, and I would act out those feelings, and like in terms of ambition, or in how I related to other people, and I was constantly looking for like basically the adult in the room to try to like parent me into adulthood, because I had no idea what was going on, and this was a feeling I'd carried with me for a very, very long time. Um, so yeah, so being able to get access to my grief has been very helpful, because it feels like a doorway into what happened 7 years ago, and I don't know, 27 years ago, about maybe a little less than 20 years ago, 2025. So 25 years ago, I guess. So the grief has been orienting. And it's like, okay, experientially, what it's like is it's like the me that lives up here, it's gone down to my chest. And that's not happening all the time, but I feel like that's what happens. Like it feels almost like I'm draining out of my head into my heart area, right? And that's often accompanied by like there's a sensation, like a stimulation in my heart. Like it's literal. I'm not being metaphorical. Like I feel like my chest. I feel it, and then I feel I just sort of sit there and I just sort of feel, whatever. Um, a lot of grief. I just sort of allow the grief to do what it has to do, right? I've been working a lot with internal family systems, just personally, not really with a therapist. I've been in therapy for a while. So what I do is I just like hold open the space, and I ask myself who wants to talk. And I've got just got a lot of feelings. um, and yeah, I've got a lot to say, mostly to myself. It's like, how am I relating to myself, And it's like, can I hold space for my grief? Can I hold space for all the discomfort that I locked myself up in for years and years and years? I'm still really scared to like take these feelings out into the world. It's profoundly vulnerable. It's profoundly uncomfortable to do that. And that's what I've been trying to like confront, is how do I translate, my my new ability to feel into dealing with the world. And the world is in a space that feels profoundly familiar for me. It's a lot of I've got a lot of company in my feeling of in betweenness that I've been carrying for at least 25 years. I've got a lot of company now, and it's almost I've been trying to settle into this in-between space feeling as kind of my home. I feel like I've got a lot of people here living with me. Um, and that, yeah, it's fucking sad. Um, and I think a lot of people are afraid of that. And, there's a part of me, like an arrogant part, that's like, well, it's nice to not be so fucking alone. And then there's a part of me that's like, this is so tragic. That we run from, they're just feelings. And how much of us are acting all this, discomfort out on everybody else. I know I have, and I feel grief about that too. I feel grief about the stupid things I've done and things I've acted out. But I've also found in being able to go to this space that I in going there and learning how to, validate my own feelings, like I learned a more sustainable way of taking accountability, where I can go to the places that feel bad and I can say, well, what did I know? What did I know? I can go there and I can acknowledge that, and I can say, well, whatever harm I've caused other people, yeah, I didn't know it, but yeah, I didn't mean to. And whatever I can do to make it right, whatever I can actually do, because I can't do more than what I'm capable of. And on the other side of the grief, when I've felt it, when I've gone there, I've cried the tears, when I've held the space, when I've allowed myself to feel exhausted and let all the bubbling up happen, like on the other side is like, it's a kind of peace. It's a kind of profound peace, where it's like, this feels like home in a deep way. I think it's a kind of like, it's a sense of valuing in a deep way. And the valuing helps you to see things in a way that lets you like, I know the story. I've told myself so many times, like, we're all gonna die, like, you have to be able to confront your death. That's very easy to say when you're suppressing your feelings. It's like, yeah, I know I have to save for retirement, like, you can, or diet and exercise will help me get fit. Like, you can say it, you can even think about doing it all you want. It's very different when you do it, when your body is feeling, for instance, diet and exercise, like the exhaustion, the fatigue, the wanting to quit, the need for consistency to get the results you want, like when you're feeling it, when you're confronting that. It's similar, I think, with grief. It's very easy to say, confront your death, as the Stoics say, memento mori, or, remember your death. It's very different when you allow yourself to really physically grieve your death, the death of the people you care about, the death of your sense of reality, the death of the things that have been your security blanket that you've taken for granted. It's very different. And see, now I'm feeling the little piece of arrogance coming up again, like, don't I sound profound? It's the other thing about grief, is it's purifying. in the sense of when you really lean into it, it's like you get I think what other people call surrender. You get that, and you realize that everything you're striving for, everything that occupies your time and attention and life, like all of that, it just sort of, it becomes minuscule. I won't say meaningless, but I'll say minuscule in comparison. It's like, why did I care about this so much when I should have been caring about this other thing? Why why was I why was I doing all of that? What was the point? And it aches and it aches and it aches. It's like when imagine being encased in armor and your skin sort of smelts to the metal, and you're trying to remove the armor later, and like this is gonna be very graphic, okay? Like as you're removing the armor, like you're trying to peel it off, and as you peel it, like you feel yourself getting torn apart, but you know you have to take it off or you're leaving it on forever. So you're ripping yourself apart so you can be free and heal. Because you're sick of being encased in armor, just barely able to move, barely able to live. That's my experience anyway. So yeah, like I say, Vervaeke was really helpful in getting me to think myself out of my head. He helped me sort of put pieces together that I knew intuitively. It was like someone who had thought my own thoughts, like my own intuitions, thought them, but had thought them more deeply and for a longer period of time, and that was really helpful in getting me to a place where I felt, I think at the end of the day, validated. As that was more of the importance than that what he was saying is correct. It's that I felt validated by what he was saying. I felt like, oh, okay, somebody else gets it. Somebody else gets that like death of home can have a profound wounding, that like how we are in the world, like when you're really in your head, you're like in searching and grasping for like how to make sense of it all, because there's just so much, and it just felt like me had a decent map, a decent enough map for my feelings to be validated, and me to feel like I think I could let go of the security blanket of my intellect. It sounds so pretentious, right? Like I don't know. Like I'm. Well, I think I'm gonna put this out there. I think people need to feel more, and to confront their grief more. I think it's important. I think it's time that we learn how to be courageous. That's been a big thing for me, is like learning how to be courageous. And being courageous is different from um, being courageous is different from just running blindly into circumstances. I think to be courageous, you have to go towards the thing you would run from. That's what courage is. And that's not, using one fear to overcome another fear. I think that can be done, too. That can be a skillful way of overcoming one fear. But at some point, you need to understand that fears can be confronted. And this is a thing that I think grief can also be helpful with, is if you're grieving well enough, then whatever you're afraid of, you can sort of track it as a an imprint in, this is going to be very metaphorical language, but as like an imprint in your heart, like, oh, I'm afraid of that. Like, what are you afraid of? Well, I'm afraid that, like, we have all this symbolism around our fears. Like, what does the fear symbolize for us? Like, if it's not literally something that's going to bite our head off, like literally, like a tiger or something, then what are we fearing about it? And if we track those fears to our heart, there's probably a need worth grieving properly there. And if you just turn the fear around so that it's not like, I need to do this because if I don't, then, the layers and layers of fear, we turn it around and say, I'm afraid of something. I'm going to use this fear to hunt down the thing in me that I'm afraid of, and to give it proper care and attention. I think if you do that, the thing becomes less of a thing that controls your day-to-day actions, your day-to-day movements. There's a lot of dead air in this video, but I'm not going to really touch it up or try to make it perfect. I understand that I don't even know what my goal is here. Like, do I want to make... There's a part of me that wants to make money off of my suffering, if I'm going to be perfectly frank. Like, I remember having this thought for a long time, like, well, what's the point of suffering so much if you can't exploit it, and make a living off of it, right? Just being frank, but that it doesn't really feel like a great place to be coming from these days for me. But I thought I would share these thoughts. You're welcome to take them or leave them as you will. Probably be putting out more in a similar vein. They'll probably be better produced. And so if I just had to summarize, right, what I was talking about today is sort of shift in the orientation of the channel from a headspace to a heart place. Why I went there, which was basically gave you an overview of the meaningful situations in my life. My parents' divorce and my breakup with an ex, and my recent stressful life circumstances that scared me out of my mind into my heart. And I also got to say, heart space living, it's way better than headspace living. It's way better than all the managing and trying to control everything. It's a very, it feels better to just be like I'm not in control. Things will die. Things I love profoundly will die. And so I better fucking savor them, and also be willing to be prepared to let them go. And be prepared to let myself go. It's all just how I'm, whatever conceptions I have that I try to cling to as a security blanket, it's all dying and living at the same time. told you about all of, gave you some thoughts about grief. Realized it's been pretty rambly. Thank you for bearing with me. I'll probably see you in the next video, whatever that's going to be about. And, whatever's going on in your life, I hope you find peace with it. I mean, I hope you're relating to it well, in a way that allows you to have peace with it. And to the degree that you've listened, thank you. I'm grateful. And I really do wish you well. Okay. Take care.